Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Minimalist Gourmet, where today I'll be teaching you how to make the French classic coq au vin, or chicken with wine. It is actually harder to say than it is to make, so let's get started. Like any good stew recipe, this one starts off with onions. Here I'm dicing 1.5 medium white onions. You can cut these larger if you like. I think it's great that everything fits nicely on a spoon, so with every bite you get a little bit of everything. Set aside your onions on a plate, that way we can cut all of our vegetables and have them ready. This makes it a lot easier to have everything at hand when you're cooking, so you can focus just on cooking. Where there's onions, there's absolutely garlic. Here I'm chopping up 4 nice big cloves of garlic. When cutting your carrot, try to keep the slices relatively thin. If you cut them too thick, they won't have enough time to cook in this dish. I like to cut them on the bias relatively thin so that way they cook completely through in the dish as well as fitting onto a spoon. You can cut your carrots a lot smaller if you'd like, as long as you're consistent. You guys have heard my motto a million times: pick a size and stick with it. Our last aromatic is a little bunch of parsley. This will add a nice bit of freshness to our dish. Next up is bacon. The traditional recipe for coq au vin calls for pork belly that are cut into very thick chunks called lardons, but that's not something that is easy to find, and bacon is much more plentiful. So I'm using one package here that I'm cutting to strips. You can certainly cut a nice thick piece of pork belly here, though. It works fantastically. One of the two stars of this show, it is chicken with wine, is the chicken. Here I'll be using 4 chicken thighs that are bone in. You can really use any piece of chicken that you'd like. You could absolutely substitute some breast meat in if you'd like. The chicken thighs tend to have a little bit more flavor, a little bit more richness, and hold up a little bit better in cooking process. But it's up to you. Whatever piece of chicken that you decide to use, make sure that you dry it extremely well on both sides. After drying off your chicken pieces, season generously with salt and black pepper. And do not forget to get both sides. That's it for prep work. Let's get to cooking. And here's a pro tip for you guys. Whenever you're cooking bacon, make sure to start it in a cold pan. This helps render out the fat a little bit better and crisps up the bacon a little bit more. Cook your bacon over medium-low heat until it's nice and crispy. As well as cooking the bacon at this point, we're also developing a nice fond, or that little brown bit that sticks to the bottom of the pan. This is delicious and exactly what we want to see in this recipe. Remove your cooked bacon to a paper towel lined plate and set aside. Next up, we're going to sear our chicken thighs in that bacon grease. Oh yeah, this is going to happen, and it is as good as it sounds. Start with your chicken thighs or your chicken breasts skin side down in that bacon grease. And this step right here is exactly why we need to have a dry piece of chicken. If you have any water on your chicken, it can spatter very violently in the bacon grease. Also, having a nice dried piece of chicken will help create a very delicious and crispy golden brown crust on the exterior. After cooking for 4 to 7 minutes on the first side, or you've created a nice crispy golden crust on that skin, we are going to flip. Keep in mind at this point you're not trying to cook the chicken completely. We're just looking to brown both sides. In fact, the chicken will absolutely still be raw in the middle at this point, and that is fine. Don't worry about that. It will continue to cook completely in the second step of cooking, which will be a braise. Once both sides of your chicken are browned and nicely crispy, go ahead and pull them from the cooking pot, put them on a plate, and set them aside. You will probably have a lot of extra bacon grease in your pan, as I do here, and that's too much for the next step, so let's pour some of that off. However, we want to keep about 2 tablespoons of bacon grease in the pan, and whatever you do, do not wipe out that fond. This dish is absolutely packed with flavor because next up, we are going to cook our onions and our carrots in that bacon grease. Add both of your carrots and your onions to the pot and cook them on a medium-low heat. We're not looking to cook them all the way through, we just want to get them a little soft before we continue on cooking. And make sure to give that mixture a nice dose of salt as we're cooking them. It'll help draw out some of that moisture and soften them up. After about 4 to 5 minutes of cooking your onions and carrots on a medium-low heat, add in your garlic. The garlic only needs to cook for about a minute or two just to soften up and take that raw edge off. Take a look at this beautiful, beautiful fond that we're developing here on the bottom of the pan, which will bring so much flavor when we deglaze it. To this mixture, I'll be adding a half a cup of tomato puree. You could substitute in a cup of crushed tomatoes or 2 tablespoons of tomato concentrated puree. Mix in your tomatoes thoroughly and allow to cook for about 2 to 3 minutes to just take off that raw tomato flavor. After about 3 minutes of cooking, turn your stove up to high and allow your pan to get nice and hot. Just when you thought this dish couldn't get any better, well, it does, because we are going to deglaze this pan with a cup of red wine. That's 8 ounces, 250 milliliters, or 1/3 of a bottle. As for what type of red wine, well, that's completely up to you. My motto is if you like to drink it, then you're fine using that to cook. And hey, if you like it, then it makes it a good wine. The wine has deglazed our pan, as you can see. There is no fond left on the bottom. All that is going directly in our dish and making it taste absolutely delectable. With your pan on high, you'll reduce your wine by about 1/3. This will burn off all the alcohol as well as concentrating that beautiful wine flavor. This should take about 5 to 7 minutes. I reduced my wine here by just over 1/3. You can see that it's changed from a dark purple color to a more rich burgundy color. This is what I'm going for. You can cook it a little bit longer if you'd really like to concentrate that flavor. To our braising liquid, we'll add 2 cups of chicken stock. I didn't have chicken stock on hand, so I'm adding 2 cups of water and a chicken bouillon cube. Add a nice big pinch of dried herbs. This is a mix I'm using to include rosemary and thyme. Bring this whole mixture up to a nice boil, and then we add back in our cut bacon or pork belly that we're using. The second step in this cooking process is to braise our chicken thighs. So we need to go ahead and put the chicken thighs back into our braising liquid and make sure that you wiggle it around and nestle them down in there so that they can touch the bottom. And like always, we're going to pour those meat juices from the plate into the braising liquid. Really nestle those chicken pieces down there until they're at the bottom, and splash a little bit of that braising liquid over top too. It can't hurt. Cover and turn your heat down to low or medium low and continue cooking for 30 minutes on the stovetop. Or if your pan is oven safe, cover it and place it in a 350-degree preheated oven for 30 minutes. After a gentle braise for 30 minutes, let's take a look at our chicken. Here we can see that the sauce has reduced nicely, but we still want to make it thicker than it is. We're going to be adding a slurry to this mixture to thicken it up and just make it sit a little bit nicer on the tongue and stay on the chicken better. You can remove your chicken if you need to for this step, or as I'm doing here, just simply stack it to the side of the pan. We want to make sure to have good, easy access to the broth that's left. I'm thickening the rest of this braising liquid with a cornstarch and water slurry, 2 tablespoons of each. Simply make sure to mix it really well right before you use it so it doesn't clump up. Little by little, add some of your cornstarch slurry mixture. Mix it around really well with the rest of that braising liquid. Now, since this has to come up to a boil before it will thicken, you will have to turn your range back on to a medium-high heat. Make sure to mix everything thoroughly so that it's all evenly thickened. If you want it a little thicker, go ahead and add a little bit more slurry mixture. That's completely up to your tastes. And hey, all there is left to do now is enjoy this delicious dish that we have made. You could serve it over a nice bed of fluffy mashed potatoes. Here I have a nice bed of creamy polenta that I made up. Either work fantastic. You could serve it by its own if you'd like, or over some fresh vegetables. I don't know what else to say, guys. This dish has it all. Fried chicken, red wine, bacon, onions. It's just hitting on every level and absolutely out of this world. Garnish with the chopped parsley and enjoy. It is just that easy to make this exquisite dish at your house tonight. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. And since you're still here, hey, can I suggest one of these other videos that I have here? I think you might like them. Come back again real soon for another episode of Minimalist Gourmet.